Our slate was stolen sort of towards the end of the shoot. At one point, Nick was clapping instead of having a slate. And then we had a little drumstick and a little dry erase board, and we would hit the drumstick. We didn't have very many lights to begin with, but as the shoot went on, the lights would get more and more broken because the wind would blow them over and the light bulbs would smash. So by the end of the shoot, I think we had like one light.
There would be no time expired if we didn't do it ourselves. I guess at a certain point we just realized we could make it ourselves. It wasn't two guys in a single room, but there was nothing in there that was so hard that we couldn't do it ourselves on a very low budget, at least so we imagined.
Chris paid me. Nick paid me extra on top of what Chris paid me. Rachel paid me even more. She didn't know about Chris or Nick's payment. Eric, who's the star of the film, he paid me too. He didn't know. Did you know? He didn't know.
And we're paying you, so.
You're paying me now. So really it's a huge payday. It's enormously profitable, I think is the business lingo.
We had no money, no crew. We didn't really know anybody in Oklahoma, at least that was a filmmaker. So we had to come in and make this happen with almost starting with nothing. The number one thing that makes this movie any good is Rachel Tucker's script.
It was a really great script filled with really good characters, and it was very simple. The whole story was really nicely told in a very honest and heartfelt way.
When Randall sits down in his chair and he's reading the mail, one of the books that Rachel gave me to look at, which was a magazine, and I don't know where she finds this stuff, but it was a magazine devoted specifically to dog costumes. Where do you get that? There's like these little pictures of these Pekingese, with Batman little outfits on. She has such a unique and kind of sweet perspective on things, but at the same time, it's kind of twisted.
I came up with the idea when I went to OU, actually. I worked as a karaoke host, and one day this guy came in. He was a meter maid. And instead of singing, he brought in his own CD, I think it was Hank Williams, and he whistled the entire song. I kind of wanted to do a play on the terminal illness movie where instead of wanting to change before he dies, he doesn't want to change. And then the idea came to make everyone else change instead. We spent from May until October working on pre-production, just staying at my parents' house, trying to meet everyone we could, collecting people, locations, props. It was just a lot of work, and the last month before shooting was insane. We weren't sure we were gonna get there, and I don't think we were sleeping a lot. I know we weren't doing anything besides working, so it was rough.
The parking meter, we found a Craigslist ad. Somebody was selling a parking meter in Oklahoma City. It only happened once during the several months of production, but there it was for $25 for an old parking meter.
No one can make a movie for $26,000 without asking for a lot of favors. This is part of the reason we made it in Oklahoma. And we liked the feel of being on location, not being in LA. But also, I grew up there and I know a lot of people, so we ended up using everyone I've ever known. The houses are the houses of friends I grew up with and went to high school with. I used my parents' house, I used my mom's office, I used one of my college professors' office.
We cast all the actors locally, and our own experience had been we ran our own auditions, but we really needed a casting director. Once he came on board and agreed to do it and we were doing auditions, I think it was like early September, that's when we knew the movie was in the bag, that we were going to have the actors that we needed and it was going to come out well. But until then, everything was up in the air.
I have a friend, his name is Chris Freihofer, and he called me up and said, hey, we have this really good script and it's coming our way and they're looking for a Jack Black type. Would you be interested in auditioning? And I said, no. And I hung up the phone and I went and I baked a pie. And he called me back and he said, seriously? And I went, no.
It was always great to see the actors in character, these characters I created, and they're just so perfectly embodied in these actors who really understood the roles, and you would see them talking in character without me, and they're coming up with lines that I would have written. When we watched Eric audition, I just knew it was Randall. I mean, he really was the part.
He was a really good actor. Like, he really had a good feel for acting in front of the camera and was really well prepared. But at the same time, he just had the right quality that he could bring to the scenes.
I have a lot more in common with Randall than I'd probably like to admit.
He realizes what is going on, and then he's playing the video game, and he dies on the video game, and he realizes what's going to happen to him. That is when you love Randall and you want him to live. You want him to have everything he wants, to be left alone, to keep his job going, to do his life's work until the very, very end. That was the point at which I thought, please change the end and let him go on.
Because he, I didn't want him to come off as somebody who is simple-minded, even though many of the things that he does are kind of simple, and a lot of his motivations are pretty direct. Actually, I had an uncle. He was a very simple kind of a man, and he lived with my grandfather for all of his adult life. He could split wood all day long. And then that fascinated me at the time, because I was, this guy who could focus on that one thing to the exclusion of everything else, because I can't do that. I got to have a lot of things going on at the same time.
I believe that Rachel wrote this part having never met me, and she wrote it for me. I prepared by waking up and arriving on set.
In some ways, he kind of embodied the character. He had this kind of crazy spirit, but he's actually a really smart guy and interesting to talk to. He's like Jay, except there's a lot more going on upstairs.
Topher and I, we went to school for a short time together, kind of at the same time at OU, and back then everybody wanted to be Topher. I mean, he was the guy that we knew was going to do well. So whenever the first day on the set, and I saw that Topher was cast as Jay, I was very, very excited. And he's just, he's Topher Owen. I don't know what else you can say.
The most difficult obstacle was not laughing in scenes that I had with Topher, because I don't have a good poker face. We were always at the door together, but every door I opened, if he was on the other side, I wanted to laugh.
He had so many ideas, too. I think that's what I like the best about him. He had taught improv and done improv for many years, working with Second City, so he did his lines great, but then if the camera's rolling, if there's some extra time, he'd just come up with something crazy.
I don't know that everybody was quite ready for it. I think sometimes I sort of took people by surprise, because here I am, I'm working with professional actors who are accustomed to, I've got a set of lines, and then I know my motivation, and I know what I'm supposed to do, and I go from X point to Y point, and that's what I do. And then here comes chunky little me going, and they go, no, that's not, I didn't read that. Where's that in the script? What?
Rebekah Turner, she's kind of like the mom of the shoot. Like her character, Corinna, she is mother-like, but just in a good way, like in a really nice and caring and kind way. She was just always, and to this day, is so supportive of this film.
Becky, bless her heart, when I first saw her, I was like, she is not old enough to be my mom. But she pulls it off, which is a testament to how good she is, I mean, because when she's on the screen, it's like she's a different person.
Really, as soon as I knew I had the role, I started writing a story for her, for Corinna, and what happened to her when she was a child, and as she grew up, and meeting Randall's father, because he's dead in the movie. And I just wrote all that just so I could have some conviction about when I talked about him.
There's something about that character that she could relate to. She even came up with stuff like she calls Randall Shug, which wasn't in the script, but it just felt right to her because that's what her family says, and it's perfect. I mean, it matches the world of the story so well.
I have a lot of relatives that talk like her and act like her, and so I really drew on those people in my life. Older aunts and uncles that smoke and have that same accent.
I think she memorized every scene in the movie, every line of the movie. I think she read the script like 100 times.
The reason I did that was because I had an acting coach that he and I were talking one day, and he said, you know, Anthony Hopkins reads his scripts more than 200 times. And I thought, well, if Anthony Hopkins reads his 200 times, I better go a longer way than that. So I started reading every day as many times as I could.
We saw several actors audition for Sasha, and many of them did a good job. And then we saw Carrie, and there was just something really special about her in that role. She had this touch where everything was kind of funny, and it was this crazy character, but it also just felt real.
I guess she brought this really kind of bubbly thing that works so well for the character. I don't know that it is necessarily the obvious place. It works so well for Sasha. The scene where Sasha brings in Randall's mail, it plays so well. It's just, she's so manipulative, and Randall is just so oblivious. It never gets old that he's just so oblivious.
Oh, Carrie, what a sweetie. That was one of the main obstacles for me, was just not to break on camera and to start laughing, you know? I mean, some of the scenes where she's in her little outfit and I have to pretend like I'm not interested. You know, when I saw Nick, I thought, wow, this guy looks just like Scorsese. It was weird, you know? It was like he's a young Scorsese, and he's so funny because, you know, he would think about it, and you know, I just can't, and then he would come up with something, and you're like, oh my God, that's such a great idea.
It was just so freeing on the set, you know, to do anything we wanted to do. And I heard him because I was at the film festival that they premiered in Houston, and someone asked him about how he directed the film, and he said, you know, I just stood back and let the actors go.
They acted like it was a family, which was something that is kind of rare in my experience with actors in theater. A lot of times when you get into a production, the actors are kind of self-centered, and they want to promote themselves and make sure that they shine the most and, you know, are seen by the producers. And I feel like Nick and Rachel really promoted a sense of family where nobody was better than anybody else, and we were all in the same boat together trying to make a great movie.
We did this one scene at the Owen Memorial Stadium parking lot where Randall's world is kind of turned upside down. And what Nick wanted was for Randall to walk past and for the camera to invert and to turn upside down. And we were talking about it for a long time, and they finally got it to work. And that was with Jason up on a ladder, a step ladder.
That's all a testament to Jason Musco, our DP, who just kept working under very adverse conditions. And the movie looks great for what it is, but it could have looked so much better had he actually had the proper resources to shoot this. We decided to shoot the movie with the lens adapter. A typical video camera, like HD video camera, has a really wide depth of field, so everything's in focus. It gives it this kind of video look. But with the lens adapter, you're putting a film lens onto that camera. It's not really native to the camera. It's this jerry-rigged solution. We had one that we thought was going to work, but on the first day, it kind of stopped working. Some of our footage is out of focus. It was almost impossible to really get good focus with the lenses in the camera.
We didn't have a lot of equipment in general or very many crew members. Sometimes Jason was just filming everything himself with no assistance.
Our monitor, so we could watch the footage while we were shooting, it was actually just kind of an old TV. But because the lens adapter actually shoots upside down, it works by inverting the image, and it's upside down. So the monitor, the image is upside down. And it's not very easy, especially if you have to follow a moving thing.
Michael Clardy did all the sound recording pretty much by himself.
Michael Clardy's a one-man shop. He's got a boom, he's got wireless mics all going at the same time. He's mixing them. There were a lot of noises that went on, like at the OU campus. Every 15 minutes, there's a lot of bells that go off. The bells just go crazy. There's I think they play Boomer Sooner. They play the theme from Oklahoma. On one day, there were really noisy birds that we called the monkey birds. It sounded almost like a jungle. I don't know what they were doing, but it was loud. So, then there was nothing we could do to shut all this stuff up. We just had to keep working through it and around it.
Shooting on a low budget, sometimes things don't go as planned, and sometimes it works out for the better. We were supposed to actually have 3 strippers in the strip club, and the actress who played the stripper in the later scene had already filmed those scenes, and she couldn't make it that day. And we ended up, Nick rewrote the script at the last minute where Jay goes, "Oh, she has a friend, 3," and it's one of my favorite moments.
It was the second rainiest or coldest October on record, I believe, in Oklahoma. It was very cold.
One of the scenes that we shot at Rachel's parents' house was Randall climbing over the wall and he falls into the flower bed. And then in the script, he actually crawls to the doorstep of the house. And of course, it had been raining and I had to crawl through the wet mud, 7, 8 times maybe, which they didn't even actually use in the film, unfortunately, but it's probably because it looked so awful.
The montage sequence was the greatest day of all time. For real, yo. Eric and I got up around, I don't know, dark 30, and proceeded to go to this fun park where nobody was at. Nobody was there. It's like this little kid's best dream ever, where the go-karts are there just for you, and they're like, yeah, keep going, keep riding around. Oh, yeah. And I didn't know it at the time. Apparently, Eric is not fond of the go-kart experience.
Topher was just lapping me, and he'd go by me and just grin. And then I got to ride with him, and I had to go clean up afterwards because I think I soiled myself.
Later on, that same day at the same park, there's this huge climbing wall, a rock wall, and you see it in the film. And Eric is, I'm in really good shape. Physically, I'm an Adonis. But Eric, I got to give him this. He actually made it to the top of the rock wall. I think I made it up like 3 rungs before I'm standing there frozen in terror, trying not to urinate on myself.
We got to go out and play with cattle, which I hadn't done in a while, so that was fun.
I didn't realize this before, but I guess I'm kind of afraid of cows. They're really big, and they're kind of scary.
In the movie, I'm actually drinking a beer, yo. It was awesome. And then afterwards, we all sat down, we rapped, and we all drank beer. What could be better than that? Randall's apartment was fantastic. It was kind of in a different area. It was a sort of it was an interesting area of town.
On one hand, it was kind of cool because it's the closest we got to having a real set. It wasn't a set, but we were able to paint the walls. We brought in the furniture that we wanted, at least as much as we could find. And then Jason Musko, who's our DP, actually stayed in that apartment. That was the place he stayed while we shot.
I loved Randall's apartment. It was kind of like my own little place because, she wanted to move in, she moves all her stuff in, she starts cooking. I loved being there.
We had several different shots with Becky and myself through a door where people are yelling at us from off screen down the hallway. Hey, let me be in your porno.
I do remember this boy, young boy, asking me, could he be in the film? And I said, well, I don't know. I think it's already cast. He lived there in the apartment. And I said, I think all the parts are taken. And he said, well, are y'all shooting porn? Because I look really good, without my clothes. I said, well, I'm sure you do. But I don't think we need that.
There was definitely one day that the police showed up. We were in a hotel shooting the hotel sequence, and apparently somebody called the police saying that we were making a porno. And the police came and sort of busted through the sound guy and the camera guy, and they're like, hey, what's going on in here? Where's the porno?
Jason was inside the motel because he answered the door, and the police said, what's going on in here? And Jason was like, nothing's going on in here.
They come in, you know, they got their hands on their guns, you know, and they're looking around. They saw that it was just, we all had our clothes on. It was, I think they were very disappointed that they didn't get to see some action.
There was a naked man on the second balcony, though, looking over. They didn't do anything about him. They just let him be. I don't get that. But cops are awesome.
We spent about 2 years working on post-production. I kept saying we weren't going to be one of those people that took 2 years on post-production, but sure enough, we did. The biggest problem was we just didn't have much money, and we were getting really high-quality, experienced people to work for us, but the only way they were going to be able to work for so little money is if they were taking other jobs on the side, and so we just had to be very patient.
Ethan's kind of an actor, performance kind of editor. He's not so much into the fast and flashy edits. He wants to tell the story and find the best performances, which was perfect for our movie. I mean, our movie relies on a lot of actors and a lot of dialogue. It's not like a horror movie or something. It's a performance kind of movie. So Ethan did a great job.
He understood comedy, he understood pacing, he was really good at picking the best takes for the actors. After watching 12 or so takes, they all kind of run together, but Ethan was good. He would just know which one was the best. The whistling music originates in the script. The character that Randall was based on was a whistler, so I wrote about this whistling meter maid. It just seemed a natural place to go for the music. And we found Chris Johnson online. His music just really fit the mood.
Plus, I wanted something that gave the movie its own kind of feeling. Like, this isn't some other movie, it has its own distinct soundtrack.
Then we decided to find some other whistlers. We learned there's this whole genre of whistling music. We used Whistling Tom, who's a whistler from Florida.
Also, we found the Whistle Wizard of India, which is just perfect for the yoga scene. I've never heard Indian whistling music.
We used just about every musician I know, a guy I work with, my brother, our gaffer. We still had a couple of holes left. We had a composer for a little while who was going to fill those holes, and he wasn't able to do it, so at the last minute, we kind of filled in.
Rachel and I do music. I play guitar, Rachel plays flute and saxophone, and I like playing music, but there's just been so many things on this movie that we've both had to do, and maybe things that we're not trained to do, and I didn't want to do the soundtrack for that reason.
Chris Winter, our sound designer, helped us out with it, and he played some drums on there.
I got out the guitar, Rachel got out the flute, and we composed a number of musical cues.
One of the best scenes in the movie is when Jay is waiting in the car, it's nighttime, and Randall tells him to go to Europe without him.
It was the final day of shooting for me, and that was the final scene that I was shooting. And after I was going to finish with that, I was going to go back to repairing computers for a living. And I think that might have played a part in how hard it was, but it still kind of resonates with me that here's this guy who essentially doesn't want to be without Randall at all. And not only is he going to do this huge monumental adventure without his best friend, but he might not ever see his best friend again. That was a tough day. Over the course of the shooting, I felt like my friendship with Eric had grown, and and we were wrapping up shooting, and I didn't know if I was going to see Eric again. After the first take, I couldn't help but cry.
Hey, Rand. I'll send you a postcard.
So Nick comes over to me after I'm crying in that scene, and he's like, all right, that's fine. That's a fine take, but we really need you to be sort of like you were in the rest of the scene. You know, you're positive, you're upbeat, and you're the comic relief. You're all jovial. Yeah, Nick, all right. Shaking it off. And we go through it again, and the same exact thing happens, except worse this time. Even more tears, and more like, I'm never gonna see Eric again, and Jason's right there, and he's doing great camera work. I don't know when I'm gonna see Nick or Rachel again. The Neptune shop is a great sub shop, and Eric's hanging in my car. Nick comes over, like, dude, calm down. And like the set starts getting quiet, and I can tell that it's because I'm not the joking guy anymore. And they had me do it like 3 or 4 times, and I couldn't do it. Sort of like Michael Jackson trying to sing, you know, She's Out of My Life. Couldn't get through it without crying, yo.
It was terrifying. I was scared to death and afraid that I couldn't do it, but at the same time I was compelled to do it because it was so fun. It was a wonderful set. Everyone was wonderful, and I loved every moment about it, and I would do it over again in a minute.
Anytime you can do a role where somebody is grappling with their own mortality, you know, I think it's kind of, you know, it's something that as an actor you love to do, and, you know, even as a person I love to do that, because, I mean, that's the big questions, right? I mean, those are the things that we're supposed to figure out while we're down here, I think, and that is, what are we all supposed to be doing? That attracted me to it a lot, my own questions about that, so.